so some of the people that really inspired me are Robin Wall-Kimmerer, who's Potawatomi, I think, who wrote Braiding Sweetgrass, which so many people have read. I just in the last little while, just amazing, amazing book. And one of the things that she says is that paying attention is a form of reciprocity with the living world. And I really love that idea that just being attentive introduces a relationship, introduces a give and take, introduces like an awareness of what I get and what I need to give. And she talks about taking her students out on the land and gathering cattail roots and in a traditional way. And she says that she finds it makes the students be tender and open. And which I love that idea, because I never think of teaching as having my students become tender and open. But also reminded of the feeling, like you talked about, Gillian, of what it's like to be flooded with the knowledge that the earth will take care of you, right? Like that we do have that feeling as children, and we kind of lose that feeling. Also really inspired by Daniel Justice Heath, who's Cherokee, and he says, stories are bigger than the texts and bodies that carry them. When absent, they leave gaps that communicate as surely as the presence is. And that was kind of what I was thinking about, was like, where are the gaps in the stories that Western education, Western culture has brought to us? But I also realized that all those books are not actually filling those gaps for me. So I talked to Dr. Cindy Pelletier, who's the chair of Indigenous Education at Nipissing, and was very kindly offering to help folks kind of rethink the colonial roots of their pedagogy. And I told her about my class, and she said, and I said, do you know anyone who might be, like interested or willing to come and speak with my class? And she said, well, my uncle Larry has a lot of traditional knowledge and healing, land-based healing practice. And so I invited Larry. He very generously accepted to come to a few of my classes, and I just feel so I'm so grateful to the friendship that Larry and Darlene have shown me. I can't even begin to tell you how much that has expanded my understanding of not just filling in the gaps of what it means to live here, but also my understanding of teaching. It's really turned my pedagogy on its head from what I thought. One of the things that Larry shared with me, I think, was when you have a group of students, you need to find out what they need from you. And, previously, as part of a traditional academic, I always thought what they needed from me was what I have to teach them, right? I bring my knowledge and I tell them what they need to know. There, use that. So this was a real rethink of that. And the other thing that Larry mentioned was that, I can invite him into a class, but it's kind of like slotting in a text. And that real teaching happens in relationship over time, in time and place, right? So the lessons, or the teachings that you bring are to the specific people that you know at the specific time of year and the specific place that you're in. And so I asked Larry if he would be interested in sharing a class, and so doing that work and building that relationship, and whether we could teach that class outside and see how that changed the experience, and also because it was COVID, so we didn't have to wear masks if you're outside. So the course, and Larry generously agreed, and we taught it last fall, and we're teaching it again this fall, and I'm super excited about that. So just a tiny bit about the course. And then I just want to read you a little bit of thoughts from a student in that class, and then I'll pass the mic on. But for the course, we meet twice a week for 3 hours each time for 6 weeks. So it's a compressed schedule so that we can end by the end of October when it gets cold. Our space moves around a bit. Like sometimes we're out, or we have been out around the campus, but we also go down to the North Bay waterfront and talk about that history and that space. The students read novels by Anishinaabe writers like Louise Erdrich, Karen McBride, Leanne Simpson, but they also, but they do that on their own time. And in the class, we don't actually lecture on the books at all, really. Instead, what we have done is that, and this is my perspective, you might, I don't know what your perspective is, but what we have done is or Larry has given teachings that are connected to the books, but that are very, very rooted in the now. So that becomes like where we are. And that becomes part of the text that just exponentially expands the students' understanding of what's written down, because so much is missed out. And I just wanted to finish this by sharing some of the words of one of the students, and this is from the last, one of Larry's brilliant contributions to this course was suggesting that the students do a little bit of writing at the end of every week, and we'll call it a class story, and they just talk about what happened in that class for the day, in that class for the week, but what their experience of it was. So it's not like a report on everything they learned. It's like, this is what my story is from this class, right? So it's like, it was a windy day. I was tired because I stayed up too late. But we had this teaching, and by the end of the teaching, I felt this way, whatever. So this little comment is taken from the last class story for one of the students who is going on to be a teacher, as you mentioned. And so he says, I never had such a love and profound connection to the land and waters I was raised on until Larry had expressed that it had taken care of me as much as my family. My own hometown waters had raised me and made me who I am, and it makes my face twitch as I try to suppress the oncoming tears on account of the state that Lake Erie is in at the moment. Perhaps I feel guilty for not exposing myself to the Anishinaabe ways of thinking in time for me to do something about it. However, with what I know now, I will not shrink or waver from my responsibilities to pass on Larry's words to the future, as I feel as though I have officially become an agent of profound change. So I think that has to be like the most moving kind of outcome of this experience for me, is seeing how deeply, and that student is not alone. It's not like he's the lone voice. How deeply the teaching that Larry has brought to the course has changed those students who go out. So I would love to hear from you, Larry, now that I've kind of set the ball rolling. Any thoughts that you have to share, or teachings you want to share with us, and I will.
Well, you did so much in your introduction that you covered it quite well. And I think every time we do something, no matter what it is, like just getting here and sitting in the circle, the time and the moment is then to learn something. It brings me back to when we went to the waterfront and we sat in what you call a gazebo, a place where you can sit out of the weather. And I told her, go stand there in that spot and talk. She got up and stood in that spot. Nobody listened, or they weren't paying attention. And now I told her, now step back 2 feet, now talk. And everybody heard. The amplification, the natural amplification of where you are, just amplifies your voice, and you get into the spirit of listening to whoever's there. That was one of the things that you could see it, you can feel it, and you can experience it right at the moment. And the students did do that. So the course that when she asked me to do certain things, I'm not an academic, I'm not I'm not quite what I call considered an academic. I'm more of a naturalist. I see the world from a different perspective, I think. But you can bring people through that. And why I'm not an academic is because I never fit into the square box. I'm more of a round type person. And I feel everything that's around me. So when she asked to do this, I was kind of scared. How am I going to talk to people who are academics? And it didn't take long before you caught on to just talking about the historical significance of a place. We went to the waterfront, and I told the students to close their eyes for 1 minute. 1 minute. And imagine, and I explained it's only seeing green out in the lake. And then all of a sudden open your eyes and the water's right there, lapping at your feet. I told him, when my grandfather was a little boy, and that's only one generation back, you could walk out almost 1.5 miles out into the lake and you'd still be in bulrushes and wild rice and the most beautiful place in the world. And I explained to them that that's how it was. In a matter of 50, 75 years, the world completely changes. And the world has got to respond to us in some way so that we can live in this place. And the students, I think they got that profound moment of seeing themselves in the past and also in the present at the very same time. And you got to give that experience out to people as you teach, like sitting in this room. I look out through the glass there. I look out over the horizon towards the lake. I see one thing that my forefathers have seen and experienced here. Those pine trees that are out there, the evergreens that are poking up out of the lush green forest that's here. They're marching through time. Those are our markers. Someday in the future, maybe in 100 years, they'll be all green like them pine trees. And there'll be no more underbrush like that's out there today. That underbrush out there and all of that life that's out there, from the grasses to the bushes to the different types of trees, they all add something to the future. And that's to the monarchs of the trees that once were here, not more than 100 years ago. Our forests were much different. And we walked through the forest in those days. You walked through pine needles that thick, and there was no underbrush. The families of trees lived in their family and their environment. Pine trees belonged in one place, and all the relatives stayed with them. But that's the way life is. And what she mentioned a while ago, she's talked about where we are in this time and place and what's happening to us, what's happening to the world. The world will fix it itself. Those pine trees, as they come back to their rightful place, this world will come back to that too. And so will the people living here. And that's the way that natural world occurs and happens. So when we teach the course, there's one book that we studied about the little birch bark house. That was an author trying to bring his ideas of what was important to her into today's society. I understand the birch bark house right away and what birch bark means to people and how very important it is to the natural world. I teach, like I was saying, I teach in a funny way. Like, I'll build a birch bark canoe to heal a group of men who have been in the opioid crisis. I will rebuild that canoe as I take it apart, and I visit the birch tree, and I do the ceremony, and I put the tobacco down, I make an offering, and I ask that birch tree for its skin, because I need that skin to survive. And it makes part of the birch bark, the canoe, it makes its skin. You personify everything that you teach, and that's where the learning takes place. It sparks the ideas and makes people wonder what's the next step. So that's really basically my way of teaching, and I do that in teaching people how to make a craft. And but it's not making the craft that's important. It's the interest. The interest is the alchemy, or the putting together of all those natural forces that are out there to make the gum, to make that canoe stick together. The roots of the plants that we pick, when you bind it, it's going to stay that way, and it's going to live and become a living entity. And at the very end, when we do the last ceremony, and I tell the people, now get in the boat and go for a paddle. What an experience. I see people cry when they get in and do that. But that's the learning experience, to get connected up to all of those entities and all of those pieces, all of those trees that you use to make that thing. I think that's where learning takes place. And I can write a book about it and put it out there, and I'll sell thousands of copies and make 25 cents per copy. But that's not what it is. What it is what you teach the people, and what it feels like, and how to. If you get stuck, there's the medicine world out there. As I look out there, I see the spruce trees that give all the stuff that you need to purify your lungs, how to purify your inner strength, which is your breath. And I see the birch tree out there. If you've got arthritis and got crooked fingers, go to visit that tree and talk to it and take the medicine from it and put that in water and drink it. Better than painkillers, because it not only takes the pain away, it also heals the body. And those are the things that I try to pass on to students. And sorry, but my curriculum is never the same.
That's right.
You know, at the moment, wherever you are, even lighting a fire. I seen a smudge being built by the head teacher here, and all we got was smoke. Yeah. You know, but we didn't have no bugs around. It's too cold. So what we're trying to do is get a little bit of heat. You teach the students, well, take these little branches and start small, and then you get what you want. So that's part of the way I teach. When we studied the book about I forget the black
Crow Winter.
Yeah. And they talked about the crow, they talked about the bird, they talked about the things that happened in that book. They were real things that were going on back then when she wrote the book, and what she was trying to put into the student's mind. But you got to talk about those things like they are today, in reference to the book. And she took us into the spiritual realm, where you can talk to a rock to really get the message of what you need for that point in time. It's quite a job to transfer that type of learning into a classroom setting. It's but the outdoors is the best place to be to do it. You want to talk about water? Be close to the water. If you want to fix your mind, sit close to a quiet tree that never talks to you, but brings you the peace that you need. Right? So when we started this morning, when we asked my brother here to go around and smudge, that's what we did. We put the minds all in order, and everybody sits and listens. Before that, it was gibberish all over. Yeah, you'd hear noise. It even quieted that feeling that I get when I come into these buildings, that nothing is working. Hey, all of a sudden, the smudge puts you in a ambiance, a good feeling place where you can talk. And that's what I'm going to share right now.